Howdy partners, it's your girl Lady Pelvic of Pelvic Gaming, and today we're reviewing Wild Arms 2 or Wild Arms Second Ignition. This game came out May 2nd, 2000 on the PlayStation 1. Of course, I played it on the PlayStation 3. So I'm a huge fan of the first Wild Arms. It was cheesy, campy, I was here for it. Then, after hearing so much praise about Wild Arms 2, I was excited to jump in and, I learned that this game is very divisive, and I understand why. For starters, Wild Arms 2 takes place in a seemingly parallel universe, so it's not a direct continuation of Wild Arms 1. And you don't need to play Wild Arms 1 to enjoy Wild Arms 2. There are a few callbacks, but none that hinder the game's story. Much like the first Wild Arms, you can choose whose story you'd like to follow first. A young man ready for action, a sorceress just getting started, and a former hero, now war criminal. I chose Ashley, the young man ready for action. You're on a mission to save a boy, he doesn't follow orders, which gets him on house arrest. Lilka, the sorceress, teleports to the wrong area and gets pulled into the Millennium Puzzle, where she hears her deceased sister's voice. This was the most annoying one. And then we have Brad, who's unsuccessful in escaping his captors. These are your tutorial levels. Ashley gets invited to join the Special Task Force. All seems well until a sudden demon summoning occurs. Skipping around details that are best experienced, Ashley is the sole survivor. A mysterious man, Irving, gathers 3 unlikely heroes to form ARMS, Agile Remote Mission Squad. Word eventually gets out of a terrorist organization, Odessa, is coming to reclaim the decaying land of Filgaia. Now, this plays like a generic story, kinda some pacing issues because you do something, come back to headquarters, do something, come back to headquarters. And at the end of the day, you're just trying to save the world, no problem, it's the journey, right? And while I'll still say the journey is still relatively basic, I do think it tackles some interesting themes in a way I've never seen done before. It focuses a lot on heroism. What is a hero? Is it good that for the moment they live in a time where there's no need for heroes, as heroes only appear in times of crisis? If you have the blood of a hero, does that mean you must be a hero? Are you pretending to be a hero? Do you even really want to become a hero, knowing what being a hero entails? Is hero just a synonym for a sacrifice? Everybody gets to live their ordinary lives, being shopkeepers, blacksmiths, scholars, etc., while an ordinary person who has greatness thrust upon them has to give up their friends, their family, their dreams, their relationships. You know, the lives of the many versus the lives of the one person, the life of a hero. The concept of lives for the many for the few isn't new, but how Wild Arms 2 attached it to heroism added a unique perspective. I've always looked at heroism as a good thing, but unless the game specifically draws attention to it, I never think of what they're actually sacrificing. Then we scoot on over to Disc 2, the second half of the game, and let's just say it puts the wild in Wild Arms, okay? It was so left field, very M. Night Shyamalan-y. To this day, Suikoden 2 remains my favorite and I believe the best example of an impactful tonal shift mid-game. Going around spoilers, this force comes out of nowhere. There's no build-up, no anticipation, no foreshadowing, and this brings me to the characters. I felt like as I was playing, getting to know Ashley, I was like, okay, he's cool, respectable, not a pushover, having internal struggles, putting up a hell of a fight to maintain who he is, and not a silent protagonist, but the entire game I kept saying, this isn't Rudy, the silent protagonist of Wild Arms 1. Lilka is a crest sorceress who's kinda clumsy, but a caring girl who's the sister of a famous and deceased sorceress, and she was alright, but I miss Cecilia. Brad, kinda brooding, lone wolf, pretty boring tank dude, wasn't Jack, the adventurer and treasure hunter. And I understand they're not supposed to be the same. Each are their own character, but I just love the cast of the first game. Wild Arms 2 only redeeming playable character is Tim. We love Tim. Anyways, the most egregious, lackluster characters are the villains. In the first game, we had the Quarter Knights, demon children of Mother, whose goal was to resurrect. They were so cool. Siegfried, the leader and strategist. Alhazad was the kind of mad scientist who uses humans for his sick experiments. And one of his human experiments is connected to our main cast. Belsec, the meathead, all muscle and likes to destroy. They were assholes and sparked a fire in you. Their actions and words provoked a response. And then we switched to Odessa. Vinsfeld, the leader who wants to take over Filgaia. He also had some stuff to do with the Liberation Army in the past, and Sonora was this woman who wanted vengeance on Vinsfeld, so she joined him and made him fall in love with her, knowing that her death would ruin him. And their love was so one-sided and unfelt. And that's not to say one-sided love can't be made interesting, but my god, it wasn't. Judica, in my opinion, got the most love, also a mad scientist-y type, sadist, views humans as toys to break, and there's a few more not worth mentioning, but they were just boring. My god, bring back the Quarter Knights, damn it. They were so fun to see interact, fun to fight, there was build-up, there was animosity. Odessa, I could not give a flying fuck about. Any kind of sympathy they tried to garner at the end fell flat. And my final example here, Wild Arms has a comic relief villain. Wild Arms 1 had Zed. He joined the Quarter Knights and nobody took him seriously, and he was a joke majority of the story. But he's funny, he tries to foil your plans, but he flees, and later he's an optional boss and you realize he's not a joke after all. Wild Arms 2, we have Liz and Ard. They're employed by Odessa, but are huge buffoons. They can't solve anything despite one of them being a self-proclaimed super genius, and the other being the one-word spouting musclehead. Now, to be fair, Wild Arms 2 suffers from extremely poor translation, and it's most prominent in all Liz and Ard segments. It's straight up gibberish. Apparently it references a lot of Japanese pop culture, and it did not make sense in the States. Brad's story also suffered from this, but it's nowhere near as bad as Liz. Wild Arms 2 is very verbose, making proper translation all the more important. The last thing I wanted to throw in here is Wild Arms 2 is surprisingly sexual, and by no means overly so, but definitely when it happens and who it happens between is very shocking. This is certainly more of a mature game, especially after coming from Wild Arms 1. Another interesting translation error, not sure if it was done purposely due to the explicit homosexuality, but in the American version, Kaina is a member of Odessa and is a female. In the Japanese version, he is a male, although very feminine presenting, and was madly in love with Vinsfeld, the male leader of Odessa. The gameplay is more or less the same of Wild Arms 1 with a few additions, but I wouldn't say there was a huge jump. Wild Arms is your standard 3-person party RPG with the usual actions of attack, defend, magic, and so on. There are a few new options such as switching party members mid-battle, which is great because this is Wild Arms' first time having more than 3 playable characters. And Guardian skills which allow you to dig out, steal, throw an item depending on which Guardian, aka a summon, you have equipped. Battles are both quick and slow. Quick because enemies normally die in one hit, but the animations still take forever. Boss battles also changed up a bit. Some have body parts which you can target. Destroy the body part and it won't be able to use the move pertaining to it. Also, if you destroy it all, you get more gold and experience. I also love how boss battles have a little opening scene. It did a great job building up that anticipation. Now each character plays differently. Ashley and Brad have arms, which can do single damage, other multiple. Ashley also has a super form for plot reasons, which offers him an entirely new skill set. Tim is your summoner and learns new spells depending on what guardians he has equipped. Lilka is your straightforward sorcerer. Cannon is a glass cannon, pun intended. She learns new skills at random when you use her skills. And the secret character is a straight up blue mage. I think the biggest difference in gameplay is how magic works. FP, or focus points. You start off with whatever your level is in FP. Level 4, 4 FP. When you attack or are attacked, it raises. Now, magic can be used based on how much FP you have, but it does not consume it. The only way FP is used is by using focus skills. So if you have 30 FP, you use a focus skill that costs 25 FP, you now have 5 FP, and you can only use magic that costs 5 FP or lower until it builds up again. This also means you cannot heal outside of battle by means of magic. As you level, you'll get access to higher level spells right off the bat. The MP system has been completely erased, and honestly, I don't mind this change, but I will say it makes this game a lot easier. When you reach 100 FP, you go Condition Green, which removes all status effects. Thank goodness, because this game is still pretty status effect heavy, especially when they start stacking, then it's just brutal. But this time we have an effective way to counter them, and a welcome addition is personal skills. I love any game that allows me to build my character, and that's exactly what this is about. Each level you earn a point, save enough to get specific skills. You can raise attack, defense, magic attack, more HP upon leveling up, and repel or lessen status effects. No longer will sleep be a goddamn issue. I mean, sort of. Enemies are still cheap with their spamming of status ailment inflicting attacks, but I felt like I wasn't asleep as long. A few other changes that affect gameplay are upgrading your arms. In the first game, each upgradable category, accuracy, bullets, or damage, had a threshold. This time, you could only upgrade your arms 10 times between the 3 categories. I didn't like this. I felt very restricted, especially because a lot of arms had very low accuracy, so I felt very pressured to put it all there as damage doesn't matter if you can't hit the damn thing. Gaining new spells works exactly the same as the first one with crest graphs. Find them, combine 2 elements to make a spell. The more crest graphs, the more spells Lilka can cast. Gimel coins are a new thing where you can immediately try a battle again. You won't be needing that unless you plan on fighting the super bosses, in my humble opinion. This leads me to exploration and dungeons. On the overworld, nothing is revealed to you. You must scan the area, and if you're near a landmark, it will appear. I hate this. I absolutely hate it. I felt blind, it led me to get lost a lot. I just had a lot of periods of frustration. I also hated that areas were locked behind story, or had to be triggered by speaking to a certain NPCs as a certain character. You'd be so confident that a landmark would be here, but until you do ABC, XYZ, it wouldn't show. The most help you would get is a communicator which would hint or tell you where you needed to go. Now later in game, you'd have a radar that shows you when an item or landmark is around, which made it a lot easier. Another thing is when an exclamation mark pops above your character's head, you are about to enter a random encounter. Red exclamation point means it's an unavoidable encounter, green means it's an encounter with an enemy you've never seen before. You can cease the confrontation before the battle begins by scanning. This is awesome, but dangerous, because it felt like a habit to hit the scan button, robbing yourself of sweet experience. That said, I abused the hell out of that system, and you know, I gotta say, Wild Arms 2 wasn't grindy. For someone who skipped a lot, it was pretty smooth sailing up until late game where it caught up to me. Dungeons are one of the highlights of Wild Arms 2. The first game had great dungeons, but the second game did not disappoint. Opening the world up to 3D space really expanded what puzzles they were able to accomplish. The first few rooms have a simple puzzle that teaches you the mechanics of that dungeon. Afterward, they become thought-provoking and just smart. Just like in the original, each character has tools. These tools are used to solve puzzles and maneuver around the dungeon. Save points are still skimpy as there's 1 per dungeon. Keep on the lookout for duplicators, which are magic keys that can unlock treasures and doors held by magic, usually housing some goodies inside. Other miscellaneous things, you cannot buy items that restore health unless you got the secret character. It sounds like a problem, but I didn't realize this till endgame. That goes to show you how easy breezy Wild Arms 2 is. Also, it tries to compensate by gems, which are found in dungeons. They heal you, but I didn't feel like I needed them often. There's a lot of ups and downs in gameplay. Overall, I think I liked most of the changes, particularly in battle, but I can't say I was wild about the changes outside of it. And then we get to the graphics, which I thought was an improvement. The fact that we had 3D environments was exciting for me. 2D on a 3D plane, I like that look. I briefly mentioned, but the dungeons are awesome. Challenging, sometimes frustrating, but I can't say they were ever dull. Towns were okay, there were none that I loved more than the first one. In battle, we go full 3D, and characters aren't that chibi Bomberman look they were. They're now full people, although they still looked a bit rough. And while I was researching, some people were saying Wild Arms 2 looked bad, and at first I didn't quite understand it, but looking at the games that came out on the same year on PlayStation 1, I could see how people were disappointed. Parasite Eve 2, Mega Man Legends 2, Final Fantasy 9, and Chrono Cross, yeah, I could get why people say this is ugly. But if you remove the comparisons, then you know, it's not as ugly. At least Wild Arms 2 didn't drop the ball when it comes to animated openings and the single animated cutscene. I love the 90s anime aesthetic, it has a rough style, and it complements the game. Also, kudos for having 2 unique openings, one for Disc 1 and another for Disc 2. And that brings us to our end bit, the music. Wild Arms is known for having a bomb diggity music. That said, I do prefer the soundtrack of Wild Arms 1 over 2, but 2 is nowhere near bad. Michiko Naruki is back with her signature Western-infused themes. Sometimes towns have different themes than others, various dungeon themes. In fact, I would say dungeon themes are her strongest suit in this game. There were so many! One thing I love in a game is when the music changes in battle to signify a new phase, or maybe the tide of battle has changed. And when Ashley transforms into his second form, there's a musical switch-up. Overworld theme still changes depending on how you're traveling, which is a plus. One weird thing is almost all the songs are less than a minute long. In the first game, they were all roughly a minute and a half. Thankfully, her songs are catchy, so it didn't feel as repetitive, but kind of strange. But mentioned previously, we got 2 new Wild Arms openings for Disc 1 and Disc 2, each having their own theme, and the second one is where it's at. Now, even though dungeon themes reign supreme, my favorite song is The Town to the Western Winds. Literally, it's one of the first songs you hear in-game, especially if Lilica is your first character choice. Once I heard this, I knew. I was like, good luck beating this song, and none even came close. It's just so wholesome, so heartwarming, and I could stay in this town forever. Oof. Wild Arms 2 Second Ignition is pretty damn divisive, and I hate to say it, but I fall on the side that doesn't have much fondness for it. I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10. I know, I feel so bad doing Wild Arms like this. I love Wild Arms, but I was let down. I was disappointed. I was bored. To be fair, I was less bored on the second disc simply because it got so fucking crazy. Positives are the music, the quality of life updates, the personal skills, being able to switch characters mid-battle, reformed boss fights, and most importantly, the puzzles were hands down probably the best part. I love that it tackled mature themes, and the exploration of heroism was fantastic. But the complete left field tonal shift was so dry. The characters sucked, mainly Odessa and Brad, and to be fair, the translation issues probably had a hand in that. Or the character personalities didn't really stick. Ashley, at least I could respect. Tim, hands down, best character, love him in battle, love his story. And this brings me to my question, have you ever played a sequel to an original game that you really loved and you're just playing it and you're like, because I felt like that this entire game. I was like, I miss Rudy. I miss Cecilia, I miss Jack. And I felt kind of bad because I wanted to appreciate the story and the characters for what they were. But the entire time I'm like, these aren't my people. Anyways, I wanted to love Wild Arms 2, but alas, it's just not for me. Thank you so much for watching. Top box are more videos like this, and the bottom box is my dead Let's Play channel. And please be sure to check out my Patreon. It's how you get into the Discord, early access, and even prints. Love ya, and I hope to see you in the next video. Mwah!